Laptop can be an extremely daunting task, especially if you're a gamer. So today we're going to take a look at a couple of different models that I looked at when I was about to buy my new laptop. Now, I looked for a couple of different things when it came to the actual laptop itself. So let's take a look. Computers or even laptops, it's hard to decide kind of what you want and what it's going to be used for. Well, I broke it down when I was researching to buy my actual new laptop and new computers as to what I wanted, what needed to be in them, what components, etc. So everybody is different and everybody has their own style and preferred manufacturers or even companies who build the laptops themselves. Me personally, I prefer buying direct from a manufacturer like Lenovo, HP, Microsoft, Samsung, Dell, Acer, you name it. I would prefer to buy them directly off of the manufacturer website. They tend to have better warranties and their components tend to actually be exactly what you're looking for depending on who you choose. Now, I broke it down into what I wanted inside of the laptop as well as what I was going to be using it for. And in doing the research, I came up with a couple of different options. So for the things that I was actually looking for, I wanted an i7 or a Ryzen 5 or 7 CPU processor, a GeForce 1060 or better GPU, 8 gigabytes to 32 gigabytes of RAM, which is a pretty decent amount. My last laptop only had 4 gigabytes of RAM, and I ran into a lot of issues with it, and I couldn't do a whole lot. I also wanted an SSD memory, preferably a 256 gigabytes worth, but more towards the 512, just because I do a lot of graphics processing on both my laptop and my regular computers. Now, the SSD is not an end-all be-all for most laptops. I do have a couple on my list that are HDDs, which they're okay, and after doing some research, it seems like those could be options, but I chose to kind of shy away from them. What you're going to be using your laptop for is really important. So depending on if you're doing graphics design, if you're streaming off of it, if you're playing games, or if you're just fiddling around with some minor word processing for school or work, everything kind of dictates what you actually are going to need to have inside of your rig. Now, for me, I needed the laptop to be able to push Photoshop. I wanted to be able to draw directly on the screen. I wanted to be able to do some minor gaming, nothing heavy like Witcher or Elder Scrolls or anything like that. I wanted to be able to just stream while I was actually traveling. That's one big thing with TwitchCon coming up that I really wanted to be able to do and take it with me. And also some minor video editing. Now, not everybody is going to have those requirements, but for me, being a streamer as well as YouTube content creation and doing some emotes and sub designs as well, I have some unique needs. Now, most streamers themselves have about the same needs, especially if they're drawing their own emotes or streaming while traveling. This VivoBook. Now, this one unfortunately does not have the processor that I wanted, but it still ended up on the list because it had some interesting components and the price point was really great for what it already had. Now, the Ryzen 3 is not a bad processor. It can do just about everything, but gaming wise, it's less than ideal. So with a Ryzen 3 and a Vega 3 GPU, it just wasn't going to hit the marker. On top of that, it only had 8 gigabytes of RAM, and it has an HDD memory instead of the SSD. Now, it does have 1 terabyte, which was really interesting, and I definitely did put it on the list because of the amount. But overall, it just didn't hit as many points as I would have liked to have had. So we kind of fell to the bottom of the list. The next laptop that I looked at was the Samsung 7 Spin, or it has a couple of different names. It has a Ryzen 5 CPU, Vega 8 GPU, 8 gigabytes of RAM, and 256 gigabytes of SSD. It's about $800, so it's in line with the Envy X360. There are some differences. The Envy, of course, has the better processor. It also has the better GPU. Now, everything else tends to match up, which is pretty common. But anytime you're swapping between the two, the Ryzen 5 is absolutely great, and I love AMD. They're one of my favorite manufacturers. And if I could have, I would have stuck with AMD since that's what I currently run in my tower. However, at a Ryzen 5 compared to a Ryzen 7, the Envy was just going to win. It's a better processor, it can do more, and the Envy does look a little bit better. Samsung also has some other options. They do get more expensive as you add things or adjust things. The next one I looked at was made by Acer. It's called the Spin 3. It has an i5 UHD 620 graphics, which is what a lot of Lenovo's are actually using. Anything with an Intel processor tends to kind of stick with the UHD 620 if they're under $1,000. Now, once you get over $1,000, you can get the G4s, the MX 130, or some other different graphics cards, which are really better. But of course, you're going to pay for it. Now, the Spin 3 does have 8 gigs of RAM, 256 SSD, and is priced at about $700. It's a relatively decent computer. It had some pretty decent reviews, and overall, I just couldn't quite wrap my head around the pricing when I could go up to an i7 or a Ryzen 7 for the processor with a little bit better graphics for only $100 more. Yeah, $100 will make or break a sale for most people, but looking at it, if I'm going to spend that kind of money, I'm of course going to get what I want. S340. Now, it has a Ryzen 5, a Vega 8 GPU, 8 gigabytes of RAM, and 256 SSD. It's priced at about $470, which is amazing. Now, the Ryzen 5, again, is not a bad processor, and most people do prefer it, even in gaming PCs today, because of its cost. Now, the Vega 8 is not as good as the Vega 10. It actually hits out at about the same as the UHD 620 from Intel, which is kind of interesting. The Vega series, when it comes to graphics cards, of course, do a lot better than the UHD 620. That's to be expected. They are made by AMD, which is, again, my favorite company, and I do love them for that, but it just didn't hit what I wanted. Laptops that I looked at were made by HP. Normally I buy HP machines because I really do like the company. They have a really good track record, and honestly I'm just more familiar with them, and that's a comfort zone for me. Now, HP has the Spectre, which is an amazing laptop itself. It's a 2-in-1 touchscreen, has a bunch of different features, and it's absolutely beautiful. Now, that laptop itself is well over $1,000 and was just out of the price range. However, HP did come up with the Envy X360. It's a great little laptop. It has fantastic reviews overall. It doesn't have everything that the Spectre has, but overall it was a really decent design, and I did kind of like it, and it actually came in at my top 2. Now, the Envy X360 that I was looking at it has a Ryzen 7 processor, a Vega 10 GPU, 8 gigabytes of RAM, and 256 gigabyte SSD. The price itself is about $800, not including tax, right off of HP's own website. Link is down below. Now, this laptop, of course, came in my top 2 just because of functionality. I did some research, and everything that I found kind of pointed me towards this particular laptop. I could draw on the screen, it would work with a pen, there were some really great options. But overall, it just didn't hit the marker in the RAM department. I prefer a little bit more RAM. 8 gigabytes tends to be the standard if you want to stay under $1,000. But there are some out there that have 16 or 32 gigs that are under that price point. So this one, of course, being at $800, was right in the normal price range that I was going to potentially have to pay for my new laptop. So I put it in the top two when I broke everything down as to what I was looking for. Unfortunately, this one did lose. Last laptop on the list was the Dell Inspiron 15. Now, this laptop itself has a Ryzen 7 processor, Vega 10 graphics, 16 gigabytes of RAM, and 512 SSD, and is priced at about $800. Now, that sounds fantastic, especially with being a Ryzen. I really had a hard time finding a lot of AMD products that had the 16 gigabytes of RAM under $1,000 because they're just not that common. Now, that's not to say that you can't find them. I don't buy my computer equipment used generally. I know some people do, some people don't. It's all personal preference. Me personally, I like to buy it with a warranty just in case something happens, since I have kids and dogs and life itself tends to break things. Computer that I looked at that I actually ended up purchasing was the Lenovo Flex 5 15-inch 2-in-1. It has an i7 processor, 16 gigs of RAM, 512 SSD, and the UHD 620, unfortunately. Now, the graphics card almost swayed me. Between the Flex 5 and the Envy X360 from HP, those two laptops kind of came in right about the same. I ended up buying the Flex 5 more based on price. So after doing some research, I also bought the pen, the Active 2 pen with my Flex 5, which does work perfectly. I looked at reviews between the two. The weight range looks about the same. Everything across the board for the most part is actually pretty much the same when it comes to these two PCs. Just one is an AMD model, the other one is an Intel. I normally would stick with the AMD models because I do love that company, but I actually wanted the extra RAM. And the Envy X360, as soon as I put 16 gigs of RAM in there, the price jumped exponentially. So there was no point in me actually doing that. So after purchasing the Flex 5, it's actually done everything that I could have possibly wanted and more. Now, it's not for everyone, and there are some hit or miss reviews. I can do word processing, I can draw in Photoshop. It has enough RAM in order to process with Adobe After Effects, which Adobe itself recommends 16 gigabytes of RAM all by itself. I can also stream, I can do minor video editing in any other programs like DaVinci Resolve. Photoshop itself has been absolutely stunning, and with the graphics being at 1080, I've been able to actually kind of tweak things color-wise that I normally wouldn't be able to do. Now, my normal tower PC has about the same. It does have a better GPU in it than my laptop does, but it's a laptop. It's not designed for me to necessarily be pushing certain things through it. I bought the Flex 5 just for the fact that I could draw on the screen, and its actual screen has a really great review. Most people who are using it as a graphics designer or any kind of design where you want to touch things, that's the way to go. Now, the Envy, of course, does have a touch screen. It's a 2-in-1. It does the fold over. It is a little thinner. The Lenovo 5 is a little on the heavy side, so one-handed, not exactly an option for me. My wrists are not the best due to some issues from in the past, but I can still sit there. I can sit on my couch. I can fold it over. I'm Regina T with Regina T Gaming, and although I know laptop buying and decision making can be really daunting, I hope this video helped you guys. If you guys have any comments, questions, concerns, or would like to see me review any other laptops, of course leave them down in the comments below. You can also catch me live on Twitch every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So catch our next video with the Lenovo Flex 5 full review after the unboxing. There is an unboxing video already on this channel, so I hope you guys enjoy, and I will catch you guys next week.